The day began like any other. People woke up, made coffee, sent kids to school, and rushed to work. There was laughter on the streets, car horns, and the usual noise of a living planet. No one knew the world was about to change forever. It started with a strange light in the morning sky, so bright that traffic stopped. People pointed their phones upward, trying to capture what looked like dozens of shooting stars crossing the horizon. Some thought it was a meteor shower. Others joked that aliens had finally decided to say hello. But within minutes, those lights grew larger, faster, and terrifyingly real. Air traffic control stations went silent as radar screens filled with warnings. Governments had no time to react. The first impact came near the Pacific Ocean, where the sea rose high enough to cover entire coastal towns. In Europe, the ground shook so hard that buildings swayed like grass in the wind. News channels lost signal one by one. No one understood what was happening, only that it was happening everywhere at once. In a small apartment, a man stood by the window holding his daughter close. He could see a cloud of light blooming far beyond the city, silent but massive. The reflection turned the whole skyline orange. He whispered, "Don't look," but she already was. The sky was on fire and no one knew who or what had done it. For the first few hours, people thought it might be an asteroid strike. The world had heard warnings before. Scientists always talked about space rocks that could one day hit Earth. But when telescopes turned toward the source, they saw something impossible. Objects in orbit, shaped like machines, were leaving trails of destruction behind them. They were not meteors. They were controlled. That was the moment the world realized it wasn't a natural disaster. Someone or something had attacked. Air forces launched whatever they could. Fighter jets roared into the sky without knowing where to go. Satellite links failed. Internet broke down across continents. In some cities, people gathered on rooftops to watch the strange lights disappear beyond the clouds, whispering prayers, some in anger, some in confusion. The feeling was the same everywhere, fear mixed with disbelief. In the ruins of one coastal town, survivors walked through dust and silence. A woman picked up a half-burnt flag and pressed it to her chest. Around her, people searched for loved ones, calling names that no one answered. There was no enemy to see, no one to fight back against. Only the sky and whatever had come from it. Governments held emergency meetings in underground bunkers. The world's leaders appeared on shaky video calls, their faces pale and tired. Every major country had suffered damage. The attacks were not random. They targeted power grids, communication centers, and major cities. Whoever had done it knew exactly how to hit humanity where it hurt most. And yet, even in the chaos, people started helping one another. Neighbors who had never spoken shared food. Strangers lifted fallen beams together. Rescue teams worked for days without rest, digging through rubble with bare hands when machines failed. The world was wounded but not broken. If anything, the shared pain pulled everyone closer. Days passed before scientists pieced together what had happened. From a small observatory on a mountain, a group of researchers managed to re-establish a satellite connection. What they found made every heartbeat freeze. Orbiting far above Earth were metallic shapes, huge, unfamiliar, and silent. They didn't match any known spacecraft design. Some appeared to move on their own, adjusting positions as if watching. A global announcement was made. The attackers were not from Earth. For the first time in history, humanity faced something beyond itself. There was shock, denial, then anger. People wanted to know why. Why attack a planet that had never even left its solar system? Why target civilians' homes, schools, and hospitals? No one had answers. In one of the surviving command centers, scientists and military officers argued over the next step. Some said humanity should hide, rebuild quietly, and avoid provoking another strike. Others insisted the world must fight back, no matter how impossible it seemed. But before any decision could be made, strange signals began echoing from space. Short pulses of energy, almost like messages. They came from near Mars. That night, the man who had watched the first explosion from his window sat on his rooftop, his daughter asleep beside him. The city was dark. The power grid was still down. Above them, the stars shone clearer than ever. For the first time, he saw the sky not as a place of dreams, but as a battlefield waiting to happen. He looked up and whispered, "Whoever you are, you'll regret coming here." Across the planet, millions of others shared that same silent promise. Humanity had been attacked, humiliated, left in ashes, but not destroyed. Something ancient had awakened in people's hearts, the will to fight for home. In the following weeks, stories spread of heroism and survival. A nurse who saved dozens without any equipment. A farmer who turned his tractor into a rescue vehicle. Teenagers who carried water to firefighters for hours. In every broken place, hope began to grow again. Scientists continued to study the debris that had fallen from the sky. Pieces of strange metal were found in impact zones, light as air but stronger than steel. Governments secretly collected them, hoping to learn something about the attackers' technology. For the first time, the world worked as one. Old rivalries were forgotten. No one talked about countries anymore. Everyone talked about Earth. A new council was formed, a mix of scientists, leaders, engineers, and volunteers from every continent. They called it the Earth Defense Council. Their goal was simple: understand the enemy and prepare for whatever might come next. It wasn't about revenge yet. It was about survival. Still, deep down, people knew what they wanted. They wanted to hit back. While most of the planet rebuilt, space agencies joined forces to scan the skies. They found evidence of energy trails leading to Mars's orbit, confirming that the enemy ships had come from there. It was a chilling discovery, but also a clear direction. For the first time, humanity had a target. The Council gathered the best minds on the planet to begin work on a secret project. They didn't announce it to the public at first. All that was said on the news was that Earth is preparing. But whispers spread fast. People began to feel something they hadn't felt in weeks: courage. Meanwhile, the night skies stayed quiet. The strange lights no longer appeared. Some people hoped the attackers had left. Others feared they were only waiting. Every small flash in the sky made hearts race. Every thunderclap made people look up. The world lived between fear and determination. Months later, the first signs of recovery showed. Electricity returned to most cities. Children went back to school. Families tried to rebuild homes, painting over cracks and planting gardens where rubble had been. Humanity, fragile yet stubborn, was learning how to live again. And somewhere far away, a group of engineers stood in a dusty hangar beside a massive metal frame. The start of something new. It didn't have a name yet, but it would become the symbol of Earth's answer. One of the workers ran a hand along the cold surface and smiled faintly. "They think we're weak," he said, "but they have no idea what's coming." No one on Earth would ever forget that day, the day the sky burned. But in that memory lived a new purpose. The world had seen fear, but now it would see unity. And somewhere deep in every heart was the same quiet message. They bombed Earth? How cute. Now watch what we do next. Weeks had turned into months since the sky had burned. The world was quieter now, almost too quiet. Cities were rebuilding and people were trying to find some kind of normal life again. But deep inside, no one could truly rest. Everyone knew something was still out there, somewhere beyond the stars watching. The wounds on Earth were still fresh, and every sunset carried a reminder of that terrible day. In a temporary control room built inside an old airport hangar, a group of scientists sat in front of glowing screens. The air was filled with the hum of machines and the smell of metal and coffee. They were tired but focused. Their eyes followed streams of data coming from satellites that had just been repaired. The goal was simple: find out where the attack came from and what exactly hit Earth. Late one night, one of the younger researchers pointed to her screen and called everyone over. There it was, proof that changed everything. A signal repeating again and again coming from near Mars. It wasn't random noise. It had a rhythm like coded communication. It was too organized to be natural. The discovery spread quickly. Within hours, the Earth Defense Council was holding an emergency meeting. The members joined through flickering video feeds from around the world. The faces on the screens looked serious and sleepless. After everything that had happened, this was the first real clue. The enemy was out there near Mars. The question was, what to do next? Many argued that Earth should stay quiet. If they attacked once, they could attack again and maybe even worse. Others believed silence would only invite more attacks. "If we wait," one of them said, "we wait to be destroyed." The room fell silent. No one wanted another war, but no one wanted to live in fear either. After hours of debate, they agreed on one thing: humanity needed to prepare. Not for surrender, but for survival. The Council announced the beginning of a global project known only by its code name, Project Ares. The world didn't know what Ares was. The news simply said it was a united scientific defense initiative. But behind the closed doors, the plan was far more ambitious. It was about understanding alien technology, building new kinds of ships, and preparing for a possible counterattack. The best minds were chosen from every country: engineers, mechanics, pilots, programmers, even miners and metal workers, all brought together for one goal. The headquarters was built in a remote desert, where the night sky was clear, and the ground could support massive construction. From a distance, it looked like nothing but sand and rock, but deep underground tunnels and labs stretched for miles. Here, pieces of strange alien metal that had fallen from the sky were being studied day and night. The material was light but impossibly strong, and no one could explain how it was made. For scientists, it was like touching the future with their own hands. One of the engineers ran his hand across a piece of the metal and said softly, "They used this to hurt us. We'll use it to protect us." That became the spirit of Project Ares, turning destruction into strength. As days passed, more countries sent their people and resources. Factories that once built cars now built spacecraft components. College students volunteered as assistants, happy to be part of something bigger than themselves. The whole world was working together for the first time in history. There were no borders now, no rivals, just humans trying to defend their planet. Meanwhile, the ordinary people continued to rebuild their lives. In towns and villages, people were planting trees, repairing homes, and helping each other. Even though fear still lived in everyone's heart, there was also a strange kind of peace, a feeling that the world was finally united. When the news showed updates about the mysterious Project Ares, people would pause whatever they were doing and watch. It gave them hope that humanity had not given up. Inside the Ares base, the work never stopped. The teams discovered that some of the alien debris contained traces of energy that didn't match anything known on Earth. It wasn't nuclear, chemical, or solar. It was something entirely different. Like controlled starlight, they tried to copy it but failed again and again. Still, they learned enough to make small breakthroughs. Soon they built a prototype of a new engine that could go beyond Earth's orbit faster than any ship before. The first test launch was a shaky one. The small craft rose into the air, shook violently, then suddenly stabilized and shot upward, leaving behind a streak of blue light. The ground team cheered and hugged each other. It wasn't much, but it was proof that they were moving forward. Back in the cities, people were slowly beginning to smile again. Markets reopened, schools started, and laughter returned in small ways. But at night, when people looked at the stars, they couldn't help but wonder if the enemy was still out there, watching. The question was never spoken out loud, but everyone thought about it. The Council continued to receive updates. The signals from Mars were still coming, regular and precise. Some scientists thought they were just automatic transmissions, maybe from unmanned ships. Others believed the attackers were building something, perhaps preparing for another strike. The truth was, no one knew, and that uncertainty made people restless. The global news channels began to show images of new construction sites, massive towers, launch pads, and training centers. The world was transforming faster than ever. It was as if humanity had shifted gears overnight. The loss and pain from the attack had turned into energy, into determination. Every worker on every site seemed to be building with the same thought in mind: never again. In one of the training centers, a group of young pilots practiced in flight simulators. They weren't from any single country. They wore no national flags. Just one patch on their suits, a blue circle with the word Earth printed in white. They trained for long hours, learning how to fly ships that didn't even exist yet. They didn't complain. Each of them had lost someone, and that pain had turned into purpose. Months went by. The Council held another meeting. This time they reviewed a new design, a massive spaceship that could travel far beyond Earth's orbit. It would carry the new engine based on the alien debris. It would be humanity's first real defense ship, capable of leaving Earth and facing whatever was out there. They named it Aegis, meaning shield. The announcement of the Aegis changed everything. The world watched as construction began on the largest shipyard ever built, right above Earth in orbit. Hundreds of cargo rockets carried materials daily. The sight of glowing lights circling the planet gave people something to believe in. It was more than just a ship. It was a promise. One night, as the ship began to take shape, a broadcast went out from the Council to the entire world. The message was calm, firm, and full of hope. Humanity is no longer afraid. We are preparing not just to defend ourselves but to ensure that no one ever dares to harm Earth again." People cheered, cried, and clapped in front of their screens. For the first time since the attacks, there was a sense of pride and unity stronger than fear. Children drew pictures of the Aegis flying among the stars. Families pinned Earth patches to their clothes. The world was beginning to feel alive again. But behind all the excitement, the scientists and engineers knew how difficult the road ahead was. The technology they were building was new, fragile, and untested. Every success came with 10 failures. But that didn't stop them. Humanity had decided they would not wait for another attack. They would be ready. In the final scene of that chapter of history, the Aegis base glowed under the rising sun. Workers moved like tiny ants across the enormous structure, tightening bolts, welding plates, checking systems. A soft wind blew across the desert, carrying the sound of engines starting. A young engineer looked up at the bright sky and whispered, "They thought they could scare us, but all they did was wake us up." The world had been shaken but not shattered. From fear had grown strength. From pain had come purpose. And somewhere beyond Mars, if the attackers were truly watching, they would soon learn that humanity was no longer the same. The Earth that had once looked small and fragile was now standing tall, united and ready to face the stars again. The message was clear and silent, carried through every beating heart on the planet. They bombed Earth? How cute. Now watch humanity avenge. Months had passed since the creation of the Aegis project. The world had changed in a way no one could have imagined before the attacks. The sky was no longer just a place for stars. It had become a symbol of purpose. Everywhere people worked with new energy, building, testing, training. The feeling was the same in every corner of the Earth. Humanity was preparing for something bigger than itself. Factories that once made everyday goods were now filled with strange machines and glowing engines. Scientists worked side by side with soldiers, mechanics, and even artists who designed the look of the new ships. Everyone had a role. Everyone wanted to be part of Earth's comeback story. The Aegis ship, now taking shape in orbit, was becoming more than a machine. It was a symbol. People called it the Guardian of Earth. It was built from both human and alien technology, combining strength with mystery. Engineers said it was the most advanced creation in history, something that could finally let humans reach the stars. Not as explorers this time, but as defenders. But the world below was still healing. In many cities, ruins stood beside new buildings. The scars of the attack hadn't faded, but people were learning to live with them. Children went to school again, though their books now included lessons about space defense and teamwork. People didn't talk about countries anymore. They talked about the planet. It was strange and beautiful at the same time, how tragedy had united billions. Inside one of the training facilities, young recruits practiced day and night. They were learning how to fly new aircrafts designed for space travel. Most of them had never left their home cities before, but now they dreamed of touching the stars. In their eyes there was no fear, only determination. They knew the risks, but also the reason. They were fighting for every life on Earth. The scientists leading Project Ares had made more discoveries too. They found a way to power the Aegis using a new kind of energy, a mix of fusion and alien tech that could last for years. It was clean, powerful, and self-sustaining. That breakthrough changed everything. Now they could build more ships in the future. The idea of a fleet began to take shape. But with progress came pressure. Not everyone believed in fighting back. Some groups across the world wanted peace instead. They feared another attack might come if humanity showed aggression. What if we just rebuild and never respond, they said. Maybe they'll leave us alone. It was a fair question, but most of humanity had already made up its mind. They had seen too much pain to just stay quiet. In one broadcast, the head of the Earth Defense Council addressed the world. His voice was calm but firm. "We do not seek war," he said, "but we will not live in fear. We will protect our home, our people, and our right to exist. This is not about revenge, it is about dignity." The speech became famous. It was replayed everywhere, on screens, radios, and even in classrooms. People quoted those words as a reminder of why they worked so hard. It wasn't hate driving them. It was love for their home. Meanwhile, in the high orbit above Earth, the construction of the Aegis continued nonstop. Thousands of workers floated in zero gravity, connecting massive panels like puzzle pieces. From below, the ship looked like a bright silver star, It was said that when the sunlight hit its surface, it shone like a mirror reflecting hope itself. The first crew members selected for Aegis went through intense training. They were chosen not for fame or power, but for skill and courage. Each came from a different part of the world, speaking different languages, but when they put on the same uniform, they were one team. Their mission wasn't about nations, it was about Earth. As the launch day drew closer, excitement filled the planet. People gathered in parks and open spaces watching the skies where the Aegis orbited. Reporters called it the dawn of a new era. It was a strange feeling, half fear, half pride, but everyone could sense it. Something historic was coming. The final test took place quietly, without any media coverage. In the control center, the engineers ran one last check. The engines roared softly, the lights flickered across the panels, and the readings came back perfect. The Aegis was ready. When the official announcement came, the world stopped for a moment. The message was short and simple. Aegis launch approved. Within hours, every news station in the world was showing the same countdown. People held their breath. Children wore homemade helmets pretending to be astronauts. Families gathered together in front of screens, united by the same hope. The launch wasn't dramatic. It was slow, steady, graceful. The giant ship moved away from the orbital platform, its engines glowing softly like a sunrise. The planet below watched in silence as the first true ship of Earth left to guard its people. There were no flags, no anthems, just quiet pride. In the days that followed, the Aegis became more than a spacecraft. It became a story. Songs were written about it, paintings were made, and even the broken-hearted found new inspiration. It wasn't about power anymore. It was about survival, unity, and belief in humanity's strength. Meanwhile, up in the command center, scientists kept monitoring the strange signals from Mars. They noticed something odd. The signals had changed slightly. It was as if the senders had realized Earth was responding. Some believed it was just coincidence, but others weren't so sure. Maybe the attackers were watching the Aegis, studying it, waiting to see what humans would do next. On Earth, the Defense Council continued to expand Project Ares. Plans for more ships were drafted. The Aegis would not be alone for long. Factories worked around the clock, powered by global cooperation and pure determination. People who once doubted the project now volunteered to join. It was as if the whole world had finally found a single heartbeat. But there was another challenge, keeping humanity's spirit alive. Many had lost family during the attacks, and their grief still lingered. The council made sure that every memorial built carried the same message. From ashes, we rise. These simple words reminded everyone that pain could give birth to strength. The years before the Aegis's first flight were some of the hardest and most beautiful times in human history. People had less, but they shared more. Nations stopped fighting each other. Artists painted scenes of unity. Farmers donated food to construction crews. Pilots wrote letters to their families, promising they'd return from space. The entire world felt like one big home. One evening, as the Aegis orbited above the planet, its crew looked down through the viewing deck. The Earth glowed in shades of blue and white, peaceful and fragile. One of them whispered, "We're not just protecting land, we're protecting life." It was true. Humanity had finally realized how precious its world was. Down below, an old man sat outside his small repaired house, looking at the same sky. His grandchildren played nearby, laughing under the same stars that once brought terror. He smiled quietly. "We're learning," he said to himself. "Slowly, but we are." As more ships began to take form, hope grew stronger. The Aegis sent its first message to Earth. "System stable. Standing guard." Those simple words made headlines across the world. People cheered, not because they were safe yet, but because they finally believed they could be. The idea of unity, once just a dream, had become reality. Humanity had faced its darkest hour and chosen to rise together. The pain of the past was still there, but it was no longer controlling the future. People didn't see themselves as separate anymore. They saw themselves as one species, one home, one purpose. And so, under the light of countless stars, the Earth continued to rebuild and prepare. The Aegis sailed quietly above, watching over the planet like a guardian angel made of steel and courage. No one knew what was coming next, but everyone was ready to face it together. Because now, if anything or anyone dared to threaten Earth again, They would face something they had never seen before. Not just weapons or ships, but the full strength of human unity. The day humanity had been waiting for finally arrived. The Aegis ship, Earth's first true guardian, was no longer just an experiment. It was ready for its first real mission. People around the world didn't sleep that night. Screens glowed in every home, every cafe, every shelter. Children sat beside their parents holding small Earth flags made of paper. Even the skies seemed to pause, as if the stars were waiting to see what humans would do next. The mission was simple but dangerous. Send the Aegis toward Mars to find out what was really out there. The signals had continued to come from that direction, steady, organized, and full of mystery. No one knew if it was another attack waiting to happen or a silent warning. But humanity was done living in fear. It was time to look the unknown in the eye. At the Aegis Command Center, the crew prepared in silence. They checked every system, every light, every wire. The captain spoke quietly through the intercom. "We go as one. For Earth." That short message echoed through every corner of the ship. Outside, the blue planet glowed softly below them, beautiful and fragile. It was everything they were fighting for. The engines lit up bright as morning. Slowly, the ship began to move away from Earth's orbit, gliding through the endless dark. People on the ground watched as a small dot of light grew fainter and fainter, until it vanished completely. For the first time, humanity had sent its defenders not just into space, but into danger. Days turned into weeks as the Aegis moved closer to Mars. The crew worked tirelessly, studying signals and mapping strange energy patterns. Sometimes they saw flashes of light far ahead, as if something massive was moving between the planets. The space around them was silent, but everyone could feel the tension growing. Something was there. They just couldn't see it yet. Back on Earth, the entire world followed every update. Schools paused lessons to watch news reports. People prayed quietly. Engineers in control rooms hardly left their desks, monitoring every pulse and transmission. The Aegis wasn't just a ship anymore, it carried the hopes of billions. Then one quiet night it happened. The ship detected an enormous structure orbiting near Mars, something artificial, something not made by human hands. The readings showed it was massive, possibly a base or a fleet. The crew stared at the screen stunned. This was it. The source of the attack. The heart of the mystery. The images sent back to Earth left the world speechless. The structure looked like a floating city of metal, glowing with faint blue light. It was unlike anything humans had ever seen, beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The world realized that they weren't just facing a few ships. They were facing a civilization far more advanced than anyone had imagined. The Earth Defense Council gathered immediately. Every major leader, scientist, and strategist joined the emergency call. The question was simple but heavy: what now? Some argued for communication, suggesting humanity should send a peaceful message. Others believed it was too risky. "They attacked first," someone said. "We can't trust them." But no one wanted to trigger another disaster. The world stood at a crossroads between fear and courage. Up in space, the Aegis waited for orders. The crew continued scanning the alien structure, trying to find weaknesses or signs of life. Suddenly, a strange signal came through their communication system, a pulse almost like a heartbeat. The rhythm was unlike any human transmission. It was as if something was answering them. The room went silent. Every light flickered for a moment, then returned to normal. The message was simple. They knew the humans were there. Back on Earth, scientists worked to decode the signal. It wasn't words, but patterns of sound and energy. Some believed it was a warning. Others thought it was curiosity. Whatever it was, it proved one thing. The attackers were still alive, still watching. Instead of panic, something unexpected happened. The world didn't break apart in fear. It came together even more. People began sending messages of support to the Aegis crew, writing on walls, online platforms, even old radio frequencies. "You are not alone." It was like a wave of courage spreading across the planet. Inside the Aegis, the crew received those messages in short text transmissions. "The whole world is behind you," one read. Another simply said, "Bring hope home." The tired faces of the crew softened into small smiles. They knew they weren't just explorers anymore, they were symbols of unity. The council finally made a decision. The Aegis would not attack, not yet. Its mission was to observe, to learn, and to show that humanity was no longer afraid. but it was also ready to defend if necessary. This was a delicate balance between strength and restraint. Over the next few days, the Aegis moved closer to the Martian orbit. The alien structure loomed ahead, silent but alive. Strange lights moved across its surface, and the closer they got, the clearer it became. It wasn't just a ship or a station. It was a colony, a massive one. Humanity was looking at another world's creation. One night, while the crew studied its surface, something changed. The signals stopped. The lights dimmed. Space went quiet again. It was as if the aliens had noticed Earth's attention and turned away. The Aegis crew held their breath. Then, without warning, a wave of energy passed near the ship. Not an explosion, not a weapon, but something like a scan. They were being examined. For a few tense minutes, the systems flickered and alarms rang. Then silence. Everything returned to normal. Whatever that thing was, it had looked at them and decided to let them go. Back on Earth, people held their breath as the news came in. "The Aegis has made contact," the headline read. No one fully understood what had happened, but the message was clear. Humanity was not invisible anymore. The universe had noticed Earth's presence. Despite the tension, something beautiful happened that night. In cities across the world, people gathered outdoors to look at the stars. They didn't feel fear, they felt wonder. Humanity had finally stepped beyond its limits. For centuries, people had dreamed about life beyond Earth. Now they knew it was real, and that they had survived its first encounter. The Aegis began its return journey, carrying all the data and recordings it had gathered. The world celebrated as if the crew were already heroes. Songs were written, murals painted, children made paper models of the ship. The Aegis symbolized not just strength, but discovery and courage. But deep in the council's meeting rooms, the scientists saw something worrying in the data. The energy readings near the alien structure were increasing, spreading outward like ripples. It could mean many things: preparation, communication, or something else entirely. Whatever it was, it proved that the story wasn't over. When the Aegis finally re-entered Earth's orbit, people everywhere cheered. The ship looked small from below, but it carried the weight of all humanity's hope. The crew stepped back onto the planet as symbols of resilience. The world welcomed them with tears, laughter, and endless pride. In the following weeks, humanity entered a new phase. Construction of new ships began faster than ever. The lessons learned from the Aegis mission inspired improvements, better designs, stronger shields. People called it the Second Dawn. The world was no longer just rebuilding, it was preparing. The idea of space was no longer distant or mysterious. It was part of everyone's daily life now. Children dreamed not of becoming celebrities or athletes, but astronauts and engineers. Humanity's imagination had finally lifted off the ground. As night fell one evening, a quiet broadcast went out across every screen on Earth. A message from the Council. "We have seen what lies beyond our skies. We are not alone, but we are not afraid. Together we will protect our world, our people, and our future." The words echoed everywhere, from busy cities to the smallest villages. People looked up at the night sky with new eyes. The stars were no longer just lights, they were destinations, challenges, and maybe even warnings. The Earth had been attacked once. But that attack had awakened something powerful: unity, strength, and purpose. Humanity had taken its first step into the unknown and returned stronger. They didn't know what the aliens would do next. But one thing was certain: if anyone dared to come for Earth again, they wouldn't find a scared planet. They'd find one ready to stand together. The world had changed forever, and for the first time in history, humanity truly belonged to the stars. The Aegis had returned home, but peace was not as simple as everyone had hoped. For a while, the world celebrated. There were lights, speeches, songs, and tears of joy. The images of the crew stepping onto Earth again played everywhere. Children drew the ship with bright colors. People said the mission proved that humanity was strong, brave, and ready for anything. It felt like the beginning of a golden age, but deep inside the control rooms and labs, something was different. The scientists studying the data from Mars had found something they could not ignore. The energy readings from the alien structure were growing stronger every day. It was as if the attackers were waking up or preparing for something. The celebration slowly turned into quiet worry. The council met again, this time in a larger underground chamber. The mood was heavy. Everyone knew what the new data meant. The first attack had not been the end. It had only been the beginning. The aliens hadn't left. They were rebuilding too. The head of the council looked around the room and said softly, "We have to decide now. Do we wait for them to come again, or do we make the first move?" Silence filled the room. No one wanted another disaster, but no one wanted to sit and do nothing either. After long discussions, the decision was made. Humanity would prepare a defense fleet. The Aegis had proven that humans could travel beyond Earth safely. Now they would build more ships, not just to observe, but to protect. The goal was still peace, but a peace built on strength. News of the new project spread quickly. The world reacted with mixed emotions. Some people cheered, saying it was time to show that humanity could not be bullied. Others feared that such a move might bring another attack. But deep down, everyone knew the truth. Earth had no choice. The universe was not as quiet and safe as they once thought. Construction began again in orbit. This time it was faster. The experience from the Aegis project helped engineers design better systems, stronger shields, and more efficient engines. Thousands of people worked together, floating in space, assembling ships piece by piece. They named the new fleet the Guardians. Each ship was different in size and purpose, some for defense, some for research, some for carrying supplies, but all shared the same mission: to protect Earth. On the ground, people continued to rebuild their lives. Markets were open again, and schools were full of children who dreamed of joining the space programs one day. The world was slowly healing, but everyone knew that peace could be temporary. The sky had taught them that anything could happen at any time. Inside one of the training centers, new recruits practiced in simulators. They learned how to control ships, manage energy systems, and stay calm under pressure. They trained not as soldiers, but as protectors. One of the instructors told them, "Remember, we're not fighting to destroy. We're fighting to survive." As the new fleet grew, strange events began to happen. Small satellites near Mars started going dark. Some reported flashes of light before disappearing. The signals from the alien structure changed again. Now they were louder and more frequent. The scientists could feel it in their bones. Something big was coming. The council didn't wait for another surprise. They ordered the Guardians to take position beyond the moon. The plan was to stay between Earth and Mars, watching for any sign of movement. It wasn't war, but it was preparation. The people of Earth watched from below as dozens of bright dots lit up the night sky, forming a protective line around the planet. Then one night, something strange appeared in the telescope feeds. It looked like a distant shimmer, almost like a mirage in space. It was hard to tell what it was at first, but then the readings came. Energy levels off the charts, moving fast toward Earth's direction. The world held its breath. Every screen, every radar, every satellite focused on that one signal. The Guardians sent warnings back to the council. "We're seeing movement." The lights in the control rooms flickered as systems went into high alert. Earth was about to face something again. No one screamed, no one panicked. This time, humanity was ready. The objects grew closer, and finally, through the ship's cameras, the crew could see them. They weren't meteors or debris. They were ships, hundreds of them, moving in formation, glowing faintly with blue light, just like the ones that had attacked before. The same fear returned, but it was met with courage this time. Earth had changed. People didn't run, they prepared. The council gave the order. "Hold positions. Do not fire unless attacked." The Guardians followed it exactly. The alien fleet stopped just beyond Mars. Both sides were facing each other now, silent and still. The space between them felt endless. It was the most fragile peace in history. Days passed without a single move. The whole planet watched live feeds from the ships. The tension was unbearable. What were they waiting for? What did they want? Some believed the aliens were studying Earth again, deciding whether to strike or communicate. Then, suddenly, the alien ships shifted, not toward Earth, but upward into deeper space. They were leaving. The world sighed in relief, but the scientists warned everyone not to relax. "They're not running away," one of them said. "They're repositioning." The Aegis, now fully repaired, was sent forward with 2 Guardians to follow from a safe distance. They didn't chase, just watched. The alien fleet moved toward the edge of Mars's orbit and then stopped again, forming a new line. It looked almost like they were preparing defenses of their own. It became clear they were not just attackers. They were protecting something too. This discovery changed everything. Humanity began to see that the enemy might not be so simple. Maybe they weren't here to destroy Earth, but to stop something else. Or maybe they were as scared of humans as humans were of them. The questions grew and answers were nowhere to be found. On Earth, people continued to live their lives as best they could. The fear didn't vanish, but it no longer ruled them. Children played, farmers worked, and cities glowed at night again. The stars looked different now, beautiful but also alive. The idea of the unknown had become part of daily life. In the following months, the council built a plan for communication, not through words but through light and signals. They hoped to find a way to talk, to understand before the situation got worse. The world supported the idea. Humanity had shown its strength. Now it wanted to show its wisdom. Meanwhile, the Aegis continued watching the alien fleet from a distance. The crew recorded everything: the lights, the movements, the energy changes. They sent daily updates to Earth. Everyone admired their courage, knowing they were the eyes of the planet. But one day, a sudden burst of energy hit near the Aegis. It wasn't an attack, it was more like a warning. The ship shook and the systems flickered, but no one was hurt. The crew steadied themselves. The message was clear: don't come closer. The council ordered them to stay back. Humanity was learning that space wasn't just vast, it had boundaries, even invisible ones. Back home, people looked at the night sky and whispered prayers again. Not out of fear, but out of respect. They knew now that the universe was alive, complex, and filled with mysteries they couldn't yet understand. The Aegis became a symbol of patience, courage, and hope. Months passed and life went on. The alien fleet remained near Mars, silent but unmoving. Earth's defenses stayed ready. The world had entered a strange peace, a balance between strength and curiosity. Humanity had proven it could fight if needed, but also that it could wait, think, and choose wisely. In a quiet corner of the Aegis, a young crew member wrote in her logbook, "Maybe one day we'll understand why they came. Maybe they're just like us, afraid of losing what's theirs. Until then, we'll guard our world and keep looking up." And that became the spirit of the time. Humanity had faced fear, survived destruction, and stood tall. They had learned that true strength wasn't just in weapons, but in unity, patience, and the will to protect what mattered most. The stars above no longer looked like silent watchers. They looked like challenges, promises, and reminders that the story of Earth was far from over. Because even if danger came again, humanity knew one thing for sure: they would face it together. No matter how powerful the enemy, no matter how far from home, Earth would never bow again. They bombed Earth once. That was their mistake. The next chapter would belong to humanity. The silence after years of fear felt strange. For the first time in a long while, the world wasn't trembling under threat. The alien fleet near Mars stayed still, as if frozen in thought. On Earth, people were learning to live with calm again. Cities buzzed softly. Children went to school without looking up at the sky in fear. The sound of sirens was replaced by laughter and music. It almost felt like the old days, but deeper, wiser, and calmer. The leaders of Earth didn't want to waste the quiet time. They knew it might not last forever. The council decided to focus on rebuilding not just technology, but trust, between nations, between people, and even between the planet and the stars. The Aegis and the Guardian fleet still floated in orbit, protecting Earth, but now their mission had changed. They were not waiting for war, they were watching for peace. The scientists studying the alien energy finally found a pattern. It wasn't random. The signals came like waves with rhythm and structure. It was communication, though no one knew what it meant. Some believed the aliens were trying to talk. Others thought it was only data, meaningless noise. But deep inside, humanity wanted to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to understand. Down on the ground, ordinary people began to dream again. Farmers planted new crops in lands once destroyed by shockwaves. Artists painted the stars as symbols of hope. Teachers told children about courage, teamwork, and what it means to be human. There was still pain, yes, but it had turned into strength. The world was not what it used to be. It was stronger because it had suffered and survived. One evening, the sky turned orange over the Atlantic as the sun dipped low. From the deck of a spaceport, families watched the ships above glimmer like silver stars. They waved, knowing that those ships were not just machines. They were shields built from human hands, sweat, and dreams. The older generation whispered stories of the first attack, of fear and fire, and how unity had saved them. The younger ones listened with wide eyes, proud of what their world had become. Inside the Aegis, the crew lived quietly but purposefully. They had become a symbol of balance, ready to defend but never to provoke. Each day they monitored signals, mapped starfields, and repaired systems. They had learned patience. The captain often said to his team, "Peace is not silence, it's work. Every day we keep this peace alive by staying alert, by staying kind." One day something unusual happened. A pulse of light came from the alien fleet, brighter and steadier than before. It wasn't an attack, it was a signal, aimed directly at Earth. The energy was harmless but strong enough to light up the night sky. Across the world, people watched the auroras shimmer with strange colors: green, violet, gold. It was beautiful, not frightening. Scientists confirmed it was the same pattern they'd seen before, but now it was clearer, more structured, almost like a message saying, "We see you." The council decided to respond, but carefully. They built a light beacon on the moon, using solar mirrors and coded lasers. They replied with a simple message, a pattern of repeating signals representing peace, unity, and acknowledgement. The reply took hours to send, but when it was done, the whole world watched and waited. Would there be an answer? Days passed, then a week, then two, and just as people began to lose hope, another signal came. Not loud, not harsh, but gentle and rhythmic, almost like an echo. It wasn't words, but it was clear communication. Humanity realized that the universe wasn't silent anymore. It had spoken back. This small exchange changed everything. The media called it the light conversation. Schools stopped teaching only about defense. They started teaching about exploration again. People talked about the stars not as enemies, but as neighbors. No one knew what the aliens truly wanted, but they knew one thing: they weren't alone and they weren't hated. That knowledge was enough to rebuild faith in the future. Over the following years, Earth transformed again. The scars of the war became monuments of strength. In the desert, solar towers reached higher than skyscrapers. The oceans glowed with clean energy farms. Spaceports became gateways, not just fortresses. Humanity had learned how fragile peace was and how precious it could be. One morning, the captain of the Aegis looked at the planet from orbit. The blue sphere below glowed brighter than ever before. "We protected it," he said quietly, almost to himself. "We did what we were meant to do." His crew nodded, feeling the same pride. They had fought, endured, and waited, and now they were watching life bloom again. Down on Earth, a child stood in a garden built where a crater once was. She picked up a flower and asked her grandfather, "Will they ever come back?" He smiled gently and said, "Maybe, but next time we'll be ready to talk, not fight." The child looked up at the sky, smiling. The clouds looked soft again. The fear was gone. As years turned into decades, the story of the first attack became legend. People no longer remembered it with pain, but with gratitude, for it had forced them to grow up as one species. The line between nations faded. Humanity had one identity now. The words, "We are Earth," became the most common phrase written on walls, ships, and even school books. It wasn't about power, it was about unity. The alien fleet never returned in aggression. It stayed near the edge of Mars like a quiet neighbor watching from afar. Some believed they were protecting something, maybe even guarding humanity from a bigger threat somewhere out there. Others thought they were just observing. Either way, there was peace, and that peace became the foundation of a new era. New generations grew up without fear. They explored space not with weapons but with curiosity. The Aegis became a museum ship, a floating reminder of the day humanity decided to fight back not just with strength, but with heart. Visitors would float through its halls, reading messages left by the crew, words of hope, courage, and respect for life. On the anniversary of the first attack, the entire planet would pause for 1 minute of silence, not to mourn but to remember what unity had achieved. Lights across cities, villages, and oceans would dim, and for that 1 minute the world would stand together, quiet, strong, and grateful. When the lights returned, they shone brighter than before. One of the scientists who first decoded the alien signals once said, "The universe is not cruel, it's just vast. And in that vastness we found out who we are." Her words became famous, carved into the stone walls of the Global Peace Center. People would come from faraway lands just to read them and feel that spark of belonging. In time, Earth started reaching farther into space. New colonies were built on the Moon, on Mars, and in the orbit of Jupiter. Humanity had learned to expand carefully, respectfully. They sent signals into deep space, not asking for help but offering friendship. They had learned the hardest lesson of all, that true victory wasn't destroying the enemy but surviving with dignity. The skies were peaceful now, but not empty. Satellites shimmered, Ships glided silently, and people from every corner of the planet worked together to explore new horizons. The dream that once seemed impossible, of one united human race, had become reality. One night, as the stars stretched endlessly above, an old man stood near the shore, looking at the sky that had once rained fire. The waves were calm, reflecting the light of the moon. He whispered softly, "We were tested and we didn't fall." He smiled, feeling the breeze on his face. We rose higher, and somewhere beyond the stars, perhaps watching quietly, another civilization might have seen that rise. Maybe they understood, or maybe they simply watched. But either way, humanity had shown them what it meant to be human, to endure, to rebuild, and to forgive. The story of Earth became a story of hope. From ashes to unity, from fear to peace, from silence to understanding. The planet that once trembled under attack now stood proud in the universe, not as a victim, but as a symbol of resilience. They bombed Earth once. That was their mistake, because they woke up something powerful, something unbreakable. Humanity. And that was the beginning of a new era, the era where humans no longer feared the stars, but reached for them with open hands, ready not to avenge but to understand.